Hi, thank you for being here with me. I am Love. This is the fourth video, and I would like to remind you that the first five videos of this playlist, named Spiritual Awakening with Love, are ideally to watch in their chronological order since they alone explain everything that you need to know in order to reach awakening, as well as to answer the question, Who am I? When we look at it, we understand that the operating mode of the filters is quite simple. Let's go back together to each of the categories of filters that I presented in the last video, and let's see what these filters consist of, as well as their mechanisms. There are often several layers of filters to remove. Now let's see these filters one by one. Your sorrows. Sorrows are first, but they actually encompass all the other categories. So you can wonder about your sorrows or suffering, but you will quickly realize that they also fit in other categories of filters. Because in the end, when you try to identify your filters, you are looking to identify everything that makes you suffer. The idea is to go and see what is behind this suffering in order to put an end to it. Sorrows are all, without exception, created by the ego. These sorrows may either appear clearly to us, but we don't see a solution to it, or harm us by being hidden behind what we believe to be good for us. For example, when I lie deliberately, I somehow believe that this is better that way. Otherwise, I wouldn't be lying, would I? Any lie harms us because it prevents us from being ourselves. If you are not yourself, you cannot really get to know yourself. And awakening is about fully knowing and recognizing yourself. To walk the path of seeing and even studying your own filters is to walk the path that leads you to greater happiness, real happiness without suffering. As for your fears, here's an example. I am so afraid of abandonment that I reject others before I even bond with them, to prevent them from making me suffer. So I don't let them into my life because I have fear of risking losing them later. My fear of being abandoned causes me, of course, suffering, such as loneliness, feeling bad in my relationships with others, never trusting others. Now let's review the two circles that I presented to you in the previous video. If I do not realize that I'm afraid of abandonment, this fear is found in the not conscious part. That is to say, in the gray part. My fear of abandonment is concealed and therefore causes a negative effect on my life without me realizing it. I will keep others away and feel lonely, maybe without even knowing why. For my conscious being, my fear of abandonment is not in the hidden part. Which means that if I honestly question the reasons for my loneliness or conflicting relationships with others, I will be able to find my fear of abandonment. To accept to see who I am is to take back my power to change. Your fears are very varied. Don't forget to take the time to take note of your suffering or filters. Here are some very different examples to show you the extent of possible fears to look for. I'm afraid to fly. I'm afraid not to be good enough in my work. I am afraid that my abusive husband will kill me. I'm afraid of drowning because I can't swim. I'm afraid I'll arrive late. I'm afraid of what my friends are going to say or think. I get scared when my brother drives too fast. I'm afraid something will happen to my loved ones. I'm afraid people will think I'm crazy. And this is a major obstacle to awakening for many. I'm afraid to walk alone when it's dark outside. I'm afraid not to be a good parent. I'm afraid of abandonment. Now I want to show you some examples of the path to follow with fears. This is like a journey with myself. I question myself in order to understand me better. If we go back to I'm afraid to fly, I have to take the time to observe and understand where this fear comes from. To do so, the next question is, why am I afraid to fly? I'm afraid to fly because planes crash. If we take a step back, which usually helps to see a situation better, we will realize that cars, they crash too. And that does not prevent me from taking place into one. So my reason may not be the right one. Let's go further. Let's say that the plane in which I am taking place falls indeed. What happens? I die. So I'm afraid of dying? I think I can add this fear, I am afraid of dying, to my list so I can wonder about that fear later on. We can continue with the planes. I remind you, it's like a discussion with myself. Where does this fear of flying comes from? I've always been afraid to fly. Really? Well, in fact, it was my mother who was afraid to fly, and I think she passed on her fear to me. Where does her fear comes from? Well, it's understandable because her uncle died in a plane crash when she was 10. Okay, and your father, is he afraid to fly? No, not at all. So, you followed in your mother's footsteps about it? Looks like. Already, another option presents itself. I could also borrow my father's behavior about flying. This is my choice now. I have just understood through this journey where this fear of flying comes from. I had to first agree to acknowledge this fear, of course, and then I had to take a time to think about it in complete honesty. The good news is that it didn't hurt at all. And that I got to know myself better now because I understood where this fear comes from. And then I even discovered another equally valid option along the way, which is not to be afraid by imitating my father rather than my mother on this level. The other good news is that I took a big step without even having to fly or to be afraid of anything. In the end, I have to choose whether I want to continue to be afraid or not. I may wonder, is it good for me to be afraid of flying? If the answer is yes, then I'll continue. But if the answer is no, then I have to offer myself enough love to get over that fear. I take the necessary time, if time is needed, because you have to be aware that all fears can also be abandoned, poof, right now. What is certain is that if I want to free myself from a fear, I must change my thoughts and the way I speak. For example, before, I was repeating every time an opportunity presented itself, I'm afraid to take a plane. I defined myself as someone who is afraid to fly. Now I'm going to say I was afraid to fly, or I'm trying not to be afraid of flying anymore, or I'm less and less afraid to fly. And that's what my life will present to me from now on. Give it a try. It's almost magical. Now let's continue with the list of fears. I'm afraid not to be good enough in my work. Why am I afraid not to be good enough? Because my father always called me his good-for-nothing son. Why was he treating me like a good-for-nothing? Because he was afraid that I wouldn't make good money. And did he make good money? If so, was he happy? If not, why wasn't he making good money? Because he had no education, he left school early to enlist in the army. And did you study? Yes, I did. There you go. My father projected his regrets and fears onto me to a point where I thought I wasn't good enough. It is actually a fear that belongs to him. I have already begun to start the path that will allow me to heal myself from this fear. Or, why don't I feel good enough? Because I never achieved anything I started. Oh, really? You've never achieved anything in your entire life? Already you have managed to be born, which is not nothing. Yes, sometimes you have to go back a long way in your past to find your answers. Not always that far though. Keep wondering and you'll find everything you've achieved so far. Enjoy those victories you probably forgot to celebrate at the time. You can even celebrate to now taking the time to celebrate your successes if you didn't do it before. The next one, I'm afraid that my abusive husband will kill me. What for? Because he did this and that to me in the past? Do you think the risk is real? Yes, it sure is. Then what are you still doing there? Why do you lack so much love for yourself? Why are you inflicting this on yourself? Here's another one. Why are you so afraid to arrive late? Because I left too late? I think we have a solution here. Or I'm afraid to arrive late because there was an accident and there is now huge traffic. These are things that happen. Enjoy the trip instead of stressing out because you're not only going to be late, but you're also going to stink from the armpit. Or worse, you're going to drive way too fast and hit someone and have a super good reason then to really be late. Your past experiences come to color your life in two ways. Bad experiences create the fear that it will happen again. Wonderful experiences create expectations that it will happen again. If the bus broke down last time when I went to an appointment to my new doctor, this time I will be afraid that the bus will break down again, and I will probably take one bus earlier. But what are the probabilities that I will be the victim of a bus that breaks down a second time on my way to the same place? My past experience has come to color my life, or my way of seeing life in this case, by creating fear. That is to say, arriving late because of a broken down bus, as it happened last time. The fear though created is unjustified, since it is based on false probabilities. Before, I wasn't afraid my bus would break down. After that, I'm scared. My past experience makes me believe that the bus is more likely to break down than before, and I change my behavior accordingly. It would seem justified to ask myself if I am really solving a problem or if I am not just creating another one by listening to this fear. Here's an example for the other type of past experience. 5 years ago, I went to the reunion party of the school I attended. I saw a former classmate there. We had an unforgettable evening together, and since then, guess what? We got married and had two magnificent children. I hope that the reunion party I will be attending on Saturday night will be as unforgettable as last time. Let's say the expectations are a bit high, perhaps. Positive past experiences create expectations, and expectations create disappointments. Past experiences are filters that make me see the current reality in a different way. To get to know who I am, I often, if not all the time, have to look at where I come from. My expectations. As I said, expectations create disappointments. That doesn't mean you cannot create goals. However, it is necessary to distinguish between intended and expected results. No expectations, never disappointed. just bonuses and gifts that life offers you. To identify your expectations, you can also conversely look for your disappointments. When I'm disappointed, I necessarily had expectations. Once I have made a list of my expectations, why do I have these expectations will be the starting point of my thinking. Your state of mind at the moment is your mood, is how you feel. If you are angry, everything seems darker. The problems pile up and are amplified. If you are joyful, you no longer see problems, you only see solutions and challenges. My state of mind also greatly influences my energy. In general, we do not dare to get too close to people who seem angry. Ugh. Conversely, if I am angry, that's when I need love the most. But I rather distance people by my attitude. Working on my mindset to be joyful as often as possible allows me to see life in pink. Being enraged makes me see everything in black. My perception of reality therefore depends on my state of mind at all times. Your beliefs and your thoughts are sometimes synonymous. I think he's just stupid. I believe he's just stupid. The difference I could make between the two is that thoughts are more spontaneous and beliefs seem more permanent. If I had negative thoughts all morning long, my dinner time could easily follow the same direction. For example, if I repeat to myself all morning that my boss is an idiot, there is a good chance that I will spend lunchtime telling who will want to hear how much my boss is an idiot. And then I will give all the details to convince any good listener. Probably the story will continue throughout the day and evening. Isn't it a lot of attention to give to an idiot? And above all, a lot of negative and unnecessary suffering added in my own life? Similarly, if I have negative beliefs, my life could take on a negative trend. If I believe that the world is awful and I maintain this belief on a regular basis, I will seek to see all the reasons why the world is awful, and this is exactly what will soon render my life awful. I've put the two categories together for my explanation because my beliefs are reflected in my thoughts, and my thoughts express my beliefs. We remember that what interests us are the beliefs and thoughts that make us suffer. All men are monsters is a belief that will inevitably lead me to see how monstrous men are. In order to be right, which is what we, humans, fall for, we will put our attention to what, for, and how they are monsters. A man is never entirely good or entirely bad. He is both, according to certain criteria. For example, with this belief, I could go so far as to push a man to the limit only to unconsciously be right. Maybe to prove me right to leave him, but the truth is that I did not have the courage to leave him when I just no longer love him. Your ego is an excellent filter creator, and ego will certainly be the subject of one or more other videos. You have to learn to decode it, but it can be very subtle sometimes. When you lie to yourself, it is the ego that acts. If I say of someone that he takes himself for another, or that he takes himself for God, or for the king of the world, it is a question of ego. I am rich, so I am powerful. It is still the ego that speaks. Lack of self-esteem makes the ego to react. The ego protects me, or rather over-protects me, from seeing who I really am whenever this doesn't fit with the image of the human being I want to see myself to be. In other words, if I am manipulative, but I believe that this is not right to manipulate, my ego will make me believe that this is not really manipulation. My ego will find me a way to present things to my advantage. The ego is used to make me look good, except that the ego only creates bad tasting illusions. And none of these aspects of the ego really contribute to my well-being, nor to really protect me. I will have to face the music sooner or later, and stretching the sauce will only give me the opportunity to sink deeper. The longer I continue to manipulate people, the greater the damage will be, and the harder it will be to fix. The ego will create filters, but it will also hide the filters of other categories. If I take the example of the fear of abandonment, when I find myself alone because I have rejected everyone, my ego will make me believe that anyway, I don't need anyone to live my life and that I can fix it on my own. The ego hides the fear of abandonment. Why? Because to have been abandoned, perhaps by my mother or by a spouse, is a reality that is difficult to accept. Moreover, acknowledging that this abandonment has made me suffer puts me in a vulnerable position. My ego may hide the truth from me, but it never protects me from the suffering of that truth. The ego deserves at least one, if not several, videos in order to really deepen the subject. It also encompasses several other categories. The important thing is not really to classify the filters in the right categories, but to make sure not to put any filters aside. I've created categories, but it's only to help you identify all your filters. You have to see them and then remove them in order to achieve enlightenment. Remember, awakening is about discovering your conscious being. Discover because it is indeed covered with all these filters. The way I perceive myself is also closely related to the ego. The ego does not act, it reacts, endlessly creating an illusion to which you can adhere or not. More concretely, if your self-esteem is low, your ego will react forcefully to any negative comment about you. Whether it is justified or not, you will defend yourself with all your strength. If your self-esteem is high, you will first wonder if the remark is justified or if the person who said it was simply in a bad mood or dishonest. If this is a remark that is justified, you will admit it and try to change your behavior. If the remark was unfounded, then you will simply ignore it and even maybe have compassion for that person. If I don't see the energy I transmit, I won't understand the reactions I get from others. For example, if I don't see myself as a person who embodies success, I won't think the other person may be intimidated. To help me understand other people's reactions, I can make a list of what I perceive of myself and then ask other people to do the same exercise by describing how they perceive me, and then I can compare the different descriptions. I might have some surprises. Do not hesitate to review this video because it contains a lot of information and also a lot of love to give to yourself. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel under the video or by clicking on the company logo, the Earth globe in the form of a purple heart, to be notified of the arrival of the next videos. You need to be logged into your account and also agree to receive notifications from YouTube on your device. You can also visit the channel regularly to make sure you don't miss anything. Finally, you can write to me if you need help or if you have any questions or comments. We will reply to you for sure. Thank you very much